Hi, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us today. This is the California Data Collaborative's fall webinar, and we're so excited today to share some really compelling and interesting data stories with Elsinore Valley Municipal Water District and their approach to district metered areas. Um, we're just going to have a quick welcome. I'm going to share a little bit about who the California Data Collaborative is, and then I'm going to hand it over to our presenters. Um, we will have Q&A at the end, so feel free to put your questions in the chat, or at the very end, we'll be able to, you can raise your hand later if you have a question. There's also Q&A function if you'd rather put your question into the Q&A, whatever works best for you. We are recording this session. I will be sending out an email hopefully tomorrow with a link to that recording, as well as all of our past webinar recordings. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and get started. So who is the California Data Collaborative? Well, we are a nonprofit. We are staffed by data experts, but really governed by our members who are all water agencies. And their role is really to help drive data-driven, sustainable water management. This is a list of all of our current members. And what we do is collaboration is in our name. So that's a big focus of what we do. Our members really drive the innovation and the software and the tools and resources that we develop. And those tools and resources include different types of software. We have a water demand analysis software. We provide AMI software and support, as well as some data science support and a little bit of consulting and advising. We also do work with academics and researchers, and we connect them to our members who are interested in solving either challenges for their own district or, things that would help the water industry at large. And then like today, we do lots of webinars, workshops, and then we have an annual summit every year. So today we're thrilled to have Tim Collie and Ryan Johnson from Elsinore Valley Municipal Water District. And they're really here to share a really interesting story about how they're using their DMA to find leaks and support their internal operations. So with that, I am going to hand it over to you, Tim and Ryan. If you want to introduce yourself a little bit more, feel free to do that. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you, Kim. I do really appreciate the introduction, and thank you for the Data Collaborative for hosting this. This is a great opportunity for us to get the word out on, a project that we've been working on, and I guess we're very proud of. We've been kind of doing this for about 2 years, and we're seeing some really nice results. So I do appreciate the opportunity. So like Kim said, my name is Tim Collie. I am the Water Operations Manager at EVMWD. I've been in at this district for about 15 years, but about 33 years in the water industry. So done a little bit of everything as far as, through the water agencies. But this was really kind of a pet project of mine that started back, let's say about 2010. Myself and the IT GIS coordinator at the time, who is now our director of IT, we had this idea of trying to come up with these district metered areas back using SCADA data and our AMR meter reading. Unfortunately, due to the way we build and the way the SCADA data came in, it just wasn't feasible at the time. So we kind of had to shelf this until we could, start an AMI system, which we did in 2015. However, the GIS coordinator, who is now our IT director, really started the foundation of this with the data on the back end. And we started that really back in 2010. And we had to wait for the technology or the AMI to catch up to our idea. And we're, where we are today. So I'm going to introduce Ryan Johnson. He is our field services superintendent, and he's been a vital part of this journey. So Ryan.
Thanks for having me. Good morning, everyone. Yeah, my name is Ryan Johnson. I am at EVMWD. I am the field services superintendent. I take care of all things meters, obviously the AMI rating, radio read system, meter changeouts and everything like that. And I became aware of DMAs through actually when we switched to AMI, we had a conference and they brought up all the possibilities that you have through AMI, and DMAs are one of them. So I'm very fortunate to be on the ground level here at Elsinore, starting the DMAs and learning everything about the system through the DMAs. So thanks for having me.
All right, thank you, Ryan. All right, I'm gonna stop sharing my video and we'll share my screen here and we'll move forward. So Ryan and I are going to co-present, so we'll be switching back and forth. I do want to point out my big red arrow here. I guess you guys probably can't see that yet, but I wanted to make my arrow big enough so everybody can see that what I'm sharing. So, all right. So I'm hoping. Kim,
Yeah, we can see it. Yep, thanks.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So we'll go ahead and move forward here. All right, so EVMWD history. So EVMWD was incorporated back in 1950, and I love that picture down on the bottom left. I don't know where that picture came from, but when anybody complains about how hard it is to do their job today, I want them to look at this picture and see that, you know, horse and buggies and shovels and, you know, really good foundation that someone set back in the 50s to start this water district. So I appreciate them doing that. 1957, we started taking deliveries from Western Municipal Water District. Fast forward in 1984 to 1986, we actually took over the city of Lake Elsinore's water and sewer system. Then in 1989, we took over another small water system called the Temescal water system, where we gained some water rights in the region and actually 2 lakes and 2 dams. And then in 2011, we incorporated another small water district called the Elsinore Water District, which was about 1,500 meters incorporated inside the Elsinore Valley area. So it was kind of wrapped around. And then lastly, in 2017, we incorporated a small private water company called the County Water Company. So you can see not only EVMWD started out as EVMWD, but we incorporated 4 other agencies into our overall portfolio, which, when you do that, you take on other people's history and other people's problems. So when you absorb some of these smaller systems, you take on their problems and their infrastructure. So we've had to basically work together with engineering to incorporate these systems to make one unified system where it can all operate together. And it's had its struggles, but it's also had its benefits. Some of the EVMWD water system highlights: we have about 160,000 customers now. We have 3 drinking water treatment plants, 2 dams, as I mentioned. Our service area covers about 97 square miles. We have 70 pressure zones, and that's really what is kind of the driving force behind being able to do these DMAs the way our system is laid out. And I'll show that later in another slide. We have 69 potable storage tanks. 55 pump stations. And again, that kind of goes hand in hand with those 70 pressure zones. It allows us to do these DMAs. Then we also have 2 import connections where we take water on the north end from Metropolitan and water on the south end from Eastern Municipal Water District. We have 13 active wells, and the slide says 748 miles of pipe, but it needs to be updated. We're about 761 miles. We've had so much growth in the last year that this area is really expanding, and we're adding hundreds, if not almost 1,000 meters a year to the area because of growth. I want to talk about this slide here. This is our hydraulic profile. This is new to EVMWD. We created this earlier this year. This kind of outlines our entire system. So if you look to the left, you can kind of see that purplish blue dot. That is our connection with Western Municipal, where we get our metropolitan water. That's about 13 miles away from our main service area. And then the pink dot on the right is our connection with Eastern, where we get imported water through there. And then at the very top of the screen, you can kind of see the little blue bar. That is our Railroad Canyon Dam and our Canyon Lake Water Treatment Plant, where we have a surface water treatment plant that creates about 5 million gallons a day of treated surface water and supplements the system. And then in the middle of the screen, you can kind of see the gray outline of the lake, and just to the right of that is the black line with the kind of a grayish dots. Those are our wells that serve the Elsinore area. So we not only have import water, we have groundwater and surface water that feed all of our system. So the big black line kind of going around, kind of a funny odd-shaped shoebox, is basically what we call our loop. That is our main transmission and distribution line. And basically you can see all the reservoirs and pipelines that offshoot. Those are all the different communities throughout our 97 square miles. that are, different homeowner tracks, rural areas, industrial, commercial, things like that. And we'll talk about that a little bit more. And then finally, the little gray lines, which are kind of hard to see on the slide, so I apologize, are elevations. So as you see the lines or the reservoirs move further away from the black line over, that's elevation. So that's going uphill. So that's part of those 70 different pressure zones and 55 pump stations. So pump stations are little gray boxes, again, hard to see, but this big black line, again, that's our main transmission and distribution. And as you get further away from that line, you're going up in elevation. So this down here is our Sky Meadows Reservoir. It's about 3,300 feet above sea level. And this over here is our Los Pinos area. It's about 3,500 feet above sea level. So it goes, pretty high elevation changes from our 1,400 foot elevation of our main loop area. Side note, our GIS technician or coordinator, he created this map for us earlier this year and submitted it to the GIS side of the world and actually won an award for this map and presentation. So we're very proud of Anthony for creating this and receiving an award from the GIS community. So with that, I'm going to turn the next few slides over to Ryan.
Thank you, Tim. All right, we're going to go over a little bit of our water meter in the systems. So we have 90% are 3/4 inch residential meters. Roughly 4.5% are the 1 inch residential and commercial meters. We have about 2.5%, 1.5 and 2 inch commercial and landscape meters. These meters are actually probably the majority users of our water. And then we have 2.6% are 3 inch and larger, and that also includes our construction hydrant meters. Next slide, Tim. All right, so this is a little bit about our AMI system. We had in 2002, we went to AMR, the drive-by system. It was at its end of life, approaching 2012, 2013. So we started piloting from a specific vendor, an AMI system. That AMI system didn't meet our objectives at the time, so we ended up going out to bid, and we chose another system that first we piloted it in 2015. So 2015 to 2017, we did a pilot program on the old Elsinore Water District, which was the 1,500 meters that we acquired in 2011. So from there, we piloted that. We liked the system. So our district had some objectives we wanted to achieve. So first, we wanted the system to be open platform, something that we can easily configure to our needs and in a vendor that would take input from us. And so far they have. We use several brands of meters now. We were all Census at one time. We switched to Neptune and Census, and since the time that we actually fully implemented AMI, we have multiple brands of meters, all the big players in the water industry. We obviously wanted it to be open to other brands and not just brand specific. So we went with a Clara brand. So it's meter agnostic. We can use almost any meter out there. They can, if it's not in their system, we can have them configure it to work with their meter. So we have all of our meters are on AMI, all of our retail, commercial, industrial, our production meters from our wells, our treatment plants, and we're currently working on our imports. We have one the Eastern Municipal Water District import. We have a meter just downstream of that import meter to help us, our meter's AMI, theirs isn't. And then we're working on one in front of Westerns. We wanted a customer portal. So we wanted to be able to display certain information to their customers. And we also wanted to have some sort of leak detection. And at the time, we didn't quite know what that was, but we wanted it to display leak detection. So we went in 2017, we went with Aclara. We started implementing it like in February of 2017. We finished that at the end of 2017. By December, we were done. We put in roughly 40, or third-party vendor put in roughly 45,000 meters at the time. And we have 69 data collectors. So those data collectors provide us with triple redundancy for our entire system. and it actually reaches a little bit outside for further growth. So they did a propagation study, and we were able to cover every meter with triple redundancy. We also, on a side note, became the first Aclara-owned AMI system. And what that means is Elsinore Valley just buys the radios, the endpoints, and Aclara maintains everything else. So they maintain our DCUs, our head-end dashboard software from them, any upgrades on software, hardware. They store the data in the cloud for us. They also set up the SFTP sites for third-party vendors to send information back and forth. And they've been very easy to work with so far. All right, next slide, Tim. All right, so our AMI system at the beginning started collecting 1.2 million records every single day, or 400 million a year. So that's a ton of data coming in daily, a lot of data points. We do actually store all that data on site as well. So we get a daily download from our AMI system, and we store it on site to do whatever we need, hydraulic profiling, usage, things like that. So Aclaris will store it for 2 years for us. So they'll have that historical data displayed on our dashboard for up to 2 years. So one of our objectives was to have a customer portal, and they were able to set up that SFTP site with a company called Aquahawk. So Aquahawk delivered everything that the district wanted to see displayed to our customers. So this picture you see is the portal that customers can sign up for free. It gives specific alerts, things like constant usage, reverse flow. You could set how you want your alerts, so they can set them by, how much you're going to spend each month, or how many units of water you're going to use per day or per month, things like that. Also, our AMI system helped us detect negative usage. So we found 6 in the last 3 months. We also, a few months back, found a cross connection with a well. So the AMI system, their dashboard does display things like abnormal use, reverse flow, constant use. So the AMI system actually helps you find anomalies in your system. It also it helps us interpret customer usage habits for further regulations down the line, and also customers can see their usage habits. All right, Tim.
All right, thank you, Ryan. All right, so this slide here is kind of based around Elsinore Valley's criteria, and it's kind of a backup of the napkin, but everybody hears about leak detection as far as part of your water audit, and how do you prevent negative usage and things like that throughout your system. And when we started looking into all the leak detection that everybody talks about, every conference you go to, you hear about the correlators when it comes to your water audit. And started doing some back of the napkin calculations here. And because we have 761 miles of pipe, the AWWA M36 manual recommends that you survey your entire system 2 times a year. So for us, that would be 1,522 miles per year. Now, granted, this will not equate to other water agencies, but some agencies are smaller, some are larger, but they can kind of get the idea of how this would affect their agency if you did just strictly a lift and shift correlator for leak detection. So on an estimate, if you're having a good day, your employees could do about a mile per day. That would take 1,522 days to do our 1,522 miles required by the AWWA M36 manual. So with 248 working days a year, and that's not counting vacation or sick leave, that's just Monday through Friday with 12 holidays a year, you get about 240 working days a year. For EVMWD, we would need to hire 6 teams or 12 employees at the base pay fully burdened, about $100,000 per employee. When you add benefits and vacation or retirement, that'd be $1.2 million per year to have a fully implemented lift and shift leak detection program for Elsinore Valley. Now, again, that is the very basic, first year when you'd add, inflation, cost of living, raises on top of that, that number would continue to grow every year from the $1.2 million per year. So that could make a really big impact to an agency's budget. In addition, not only just for the staff, we'd still have to buy 6 more trucks, which require more fuel, more maintenance, more vehicle insurance, along with the 6 correlator units. So that would be, with the lift and shift correlators that you can see over here on the right. If you're not familiar with those, basically you go out throughout your system, you drop those down into valve cans or on fire hydrants, and they're magnetic, and you can attach those to the valves, and you can set them up for, 4 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours to listen to the system. And it will basically kind of pinpoint a leak in between 2 points. It'll tell you, you have an 80% chance of a leak, a 90% chance, and it'll kind of give you a general location. They're great if you know you have a leak, but to walk blindly through a 97 square mile agency, you can see it'd be quite expensive and take quite a bit of time. The next option is hydrant correlators. It's kind of a newer technology. I got some of this information from the Tri-State event in Las Vegas last year. So talking with a vendor, you'd need about 80% of your service area covered to have an adequate hydrant correlator system. Since we have over 8,400 fire hydrants, we'd have to purchase 6,726 correlators as of today's counts. Now, granted, we're growing every day. We're adding hydrants and pipelines and meters monthly here in Elsinore Valley. So each of those correlators are approximately $1,200 each, which total about $8 million upfront capital investment. And again, that's just for the equipment. That's not counting the labor to install it, and then someone has to monitor it and also purchase the software. So again, these are some kind of the back of the napkin calculations for that are associated with the Elsinore Valley. But you can kind of use that same information for your service area to kind of come up with an idea. Is the lift and shift correlator a good option to go, or hydrant correlators, or invest in the DMAs? So what is a district metered area? So this is a definition right out of the DMA handbook. It's a hydraulically isolated or discrete zone consisting of known points of inflows and outflows. It has metered entering, exiting, and isolated zone, and we'll talk about some of those here shortly. And we kind of briefly talked about that with the hydraulic profile. You have to have all your services within that zone metered. We sat in on a presentation for a very large metropolitan city last year who tried to do their own DMA when 20% of their meters were unmetered. And it's unfortunate, but it sounded like they kind of quit that program and weren't able to move forward because they got ahead of their own self, I think, by having 20% of their area with 0 meters. They were just straight lined. So you have to have all your meters, within the zone. So we have almost, I think Brian said 47,000 plus meters. Everyone in our service area has a meter and is AMI audited. We also use this to audit water loss, as Ryan talked about. We can use it for high usages with customers. We sometimes know customers have leaks before they do, and our customer service team will get on the phone to customers and say, hey, did you know that in the last 24 or 48 hours, you've used this much water? And we've actually had some very good success stories on that, where customers were out of town or had a leak on the lower part of the property and did not know it. And we were able to, save them thousands of dollars in, a water loss due to their, a high bill due to the water loss. Some of the other benefits that we're getting out of this district metered area is water loss control. Like I talked about, we're kind of keeping an eye on these high usages. It's been very helpful for our audit validation. Our validators really like the information that we're able to provide. Haley, she's in our conservation department. She can use this information to kind of pinpoint people or areas that are using excessive amounts of water, and they can focus their conservation efforts with those HOAs. And it really does kind of a unintended benefit from this that we're noticing, kind of helps us verify our meter accuracies. So we'll talk about meter accuracies a little bit more towards the end. I'll turn it back over to Ryan for a second.
All right. So some of the reasons that we created DMAs are not the only reasons, but So we've got, the good old California Senate Bill 555. This bill requires retail water suppliers to conduct a yearly water loss audit starting in 2017. So we all know the regulatory compliance components associated with that. Everybody has their own, and they want you to do leak detection, things like that. So we figure the DMAs will help satisfy some of that leak detection by eliminating areas that we may have to target. So also volumetric verification. So one of our standards is 18.6 gallons per connection per day that we have to meet. So we set up DMAs, and we can calculate within those DMAs that gallon per connection per day, and make sure that each DMA is complying with our standard set by the State Water Resources Control Board for the apparent loss. We can also show that an area, maybe it's not economically feasible to perform conventional leak detection. So the DMA hopefully will satisfy any leak surveys we need to do through regulation. So yeah, which that would also, like Tim said, require additional staff to perform that type of leak detection. So we can actually target those zones and hopefully not have to hire any new staff to perform that type of leak detection. Another reason, my reason I stated earlier is I was at a Aclara conference, and we were discussing the pressure loggers and the DMAs and lift and shift, things like that. So Aclara's, or most AMI systems, have the ability to use these types of things. So DMAs, Aclara's working with some different companies for pressure logging that have the AMI radio attached to them, so you receive that information back live to you, or not live, but every hour you receive that information back to you. Same thing with lift and shift leak detection. If we have to go that route, AMI does actually support that, so you can buy your lift and shift correlators. Clara uses Zone Scan too, I believe, that comes with their own valve lids and an antenna built into that, so you stick them on the valves, and that'll actually come back in to your AMI system, which you can use in correlation with your DMAs and target areas that are of concern. All right, Tim, next slide.
All right, thank you, Ryan. So this is another shot of that hydraulic profile that we talked about earlier. This basically is kind of just a estimated outlook of our potential DMAs. We're estimating about 20 total DMAs throughout our entire area. You can see the little blue boxes. Those are different communities throughout the 8 areas, and we'll talk about some of those in more detail in the next slide. The first 19 DMAs I'm going to say are going to be easy compared to the last one. So the last one of the 20 will be what we call the loop zone, and that's about 20% of our customers, which are off of this black line that runs around the lake. And in order to do that pressure zone or that DMA, we have to have all the other 19 completed first. And I don't even want to begin to see the math calculations that our IT department will have to do that final DMA, but we're working towards that. And we suspect by the time we work through all these other 19 DMAs, we'll be very ready for that last 20th one, which will be the hardest one, but definitely we're looking forward to seeing the end product on that. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and move forward with, I think, what everybody's here to see. So hopefully I'm going to move this over here. Ryan, can you see that dashboard correctly?
Yes, sure can.
Okay, great. So we have 2 different dashboards I'm going to go over through this project. This is first off our GIS dashboard. This is basically through our GIS data that we have, and it basically takes the AMI data and incorporates it and comes up with a more visually appealing, I guess, graph or data of our service areas. Now on this, we're only showing 6 DMAs right now, but we do have a total of 10, and we'll see those here in a second. And you can see them in the little color coordinated areas over here. We have Horse Thief, and then we have La Laguna, Ortega, Sky Meadows, and we'll be talking about some of these. So you can see kind of the areas that they cover, and the information drills down inside. So we're going to take a look at the very first DMA that we ever did, and this is La Laguna. This was our beta test, and let's make sure that loads up here. Ryan, can you see that okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. So this is the La Laguna area. This is on the west side of the lake. And this is our very first DMA that we did. It's about, if you look over here on the left, 507 residential homes and 19 irrigation. So 526 meters total. So we didn't want to bite off too much of that apple to begin with. So we started with a moderate sized zone. Plus the meter that was at the pump station here already was AMI capable. That was kind of by accident, but we were happy that it worked out that way. And just to show you how a DMA zone works, so our pump station that feeds into this zone is right here. So it feeds in, you can see the two different colors. You got the dark blue and light blue. So we have two reservoir zones in this area. We have La Laguna 1 and La Laguna 2. But every drop of water that feeds these 526 meters all goes through this one pump station. So there we have, I think it's a 12-inch mag meter that is now AMI compatible, and it basically takes a read every hour. And basically we can look at this stuff, look at the DMAs almost weekly, but we try to span it out to monthly because there's so much data. Down here on the bottom, we'll go through this real quick. You can see all the different customers, and if I scroll through here, you can see a light blue box in the middle that basically identifies that customer. So if you wanted to know who your highest user was in this community, you can scroll over. It'll pinpoint, hopefully you can see that up in the kind of left corner, there is a little light blue box around the property. And that tells you who your highest user is in that area. So potentially they have a leak, or they're just, maybe a large family in there, or a lot of landscape irrigation. But we can cross-reference that with our AMI system to find out, do they have a continuous leak? Is there something that we need to address with the customer? Or do they need, some conservation, updates to maybe use their water more wisely? On the other hand, if we go down to the other end, we can scroll down, who is the lowest user? And you can kind of take a look, and we'll scroll down here, and you can see, it's kind of hard to see. Let's see if I can zoom in a little bit better. Sorry. So if we scroll into one of these smaller users right here, is that meter reading accurately? You can kind of see that light blue box kind of towards the center left. And again, we can cross-reference that AMI information and find out maybe that meter was aged, or there's an issue, or maybe there's just one person living in that house. We can also zoom in on this area here. Let me scroll back up. And you can identify, let's see where that. So if you get a customer that's showing that lower than normal usage, sorry, let me scroll back in here. You can actually click on the parcel, and it gives you the information, the customer's name, the audit zone. This is what's real important. This is that information I told you our IT director developed back in 2010, was the identification for every parcel. So every parcel, every meter, so 47,000 plus, have an identification, basically what reservoir they're attached to. So in this case, this is La Laguna 2 tank. So this parcel right here is part of the La Laguna 2, and that's how it's determined, and that's how the back end calculates which DMA. So this would be the La Laguna 1 and La Laguna 2 DMA. And then you can also scroll down and get more customer information. Get down here to the bottom. You can see that the meters registering in cubic feet and how many cubic foot they've used for the last 30 days. The one, I guess, downside to the GIS dashboard is you can only see 30 days worth of information. And so this kind of, let me scroll up here a little bit. So for the last 30 days, this zone is reading actually 102% accurate. And we know that is an error because the input meter down here at the bottom at the pump station has to be cleaned once a year. And I'll talk about that later in another slide. So but you can see the average in this zone is 102, which is a little high, but we know why that's happening, and that averages out month over month, and we'll show you here in a second. So with that, I'm going to switch to our other dashboard. So let me get to La Laguna here. So this is our main dashboard that we use, and you can see these are 10 different DMAs up here through the scroll down box. You can choose by date range. We're going to go back to January 1st, so we can have a nice long date range in here and kind of take a look at the DMA. We also have the DMA start date. So we know when this one started. Oh, sorry, let me switch back to La Laguna. I apologize. So La Laguna, like I said, was our beta test site, and it was basically hit its 2-year birthday just a couple days ago. So we've been online for 2 years in this zone. And so you can see all the different drop down dates. You can pick, 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, whatever you want, as long as you don't go back before this start date or you'll get erroneous data. Some of the information that you see here is the amount of water produced. So this is the amount of water that went through the input meter at the pump station. You can drill through, again, I don't want to get too far into the weeds, but you can see all the data points that come through on there on the back end that the IT, sorry, IT has developed. Get back out of there, sorry. Our tanks. So our tanks go up and down every day. And what we had to do is come up with a calculation of how much water was excess stored or overly used during that time frame. So on January 1st and October 1st, the back end information calculates through our SCADA system how much water is in that reservoir. So because what the water was on January 1st versus what it is today, where there's an extra 491 100 cubic feet of water being stored that wasn't sold yet. So we take that into account. And again, we can drill through all the back end data through here, through the reservoirs, and like thousands and thousands of data points that IT has in here. And it calculates plus and minus every day to come up with the calculation of, so because we produce 89,000, we produce another 491 out of the tanks. The net value for that time period of those 10 months was 90,000 100 cubic feet of water sold to the customers. Down here, we take that 90,000 minus what we sold to the customers. We also have this box here so we can add a known loss. So if a hydrant is hit or there's a water main break in that zone, or we have a hydrant meter, we actually have 2 very large hydrant meters that are not AMI compatible that are still in the system. So if a hydrant meter is put into that zone for 30, 60, 90 days, it could do a lot of impact to your overall DMA. So we have the ability to go in and add the usage from, like I said, a hydrant break or a known leak that we track, and that will help kind of keep our zones accurate. So through this total 10-month period, we had a 461 100 cubic feet loss, and all the calculations gives us a 99.5% accuracy rate. So we've established that anything above 95% in our system is considered an A+, and it isn't worth, kind of doing any more investigation. Now there's an asterisk to every rule, and we'll talk about some of those. But when we started looking at this in more detail, it's like, okay, well, what does that loss equate to in dollars? So we are using a median price of our water, because we are a tiered rate system, of $3.75 for every unit of water that is not sold. And we're losing approximately about $189 every 30 days in this zone. Now, when we go back and talk about the lift and shift or those hydrant correlators, that would be a massive, large investment and time investment for staff to go look for $189 worth of water in that zone. So we would consider this zone clean and tight and doesn't require any other additional research. So I'm going to move on to another slide here real quick. So I'm going to go to one that's not quite as is efficient. So this is our Canyon Lake zone. All the information still stays the same here, but this zone has over 3,000 meters in it. And I'll show you the zone here in a second. But this zone's 92.6% accurate over the last 10 months, which is almost a little.
Hey, Tim, it's Ryan.
I'm sorry.
Adjust the start date, because the start date was 5/13 on.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. I apologize. Thank you, Ryan. I knew 5/13. Thank you, Ryan. That changes a little bit. Yeah, that's better. So we're at 92%, and we're at a $17,000 a month, almost $18,000 a month loss in this zone. Like I said, this is a very large zone. But again, before we, panic and say, hey, we're going to go out and start doing leak detection, or buying a bunch of hydrant correlators, we started looking at the history of the meters in this zone. Excuse me for 1 second. So looking at this zone, we found that about 50% of these meters are over 20 years old, and we'll talk about that a little bit more towards the end. But our meter, change out program is every 20 years, so we are well behind meter change out in this zone, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. Let me go back to this one here, and I'm going to show you the Canyon Lake zone. So this is one of our larger zones and one of our nicer communities. You can see let's kind of zoom in and zoom out here. All the properties in here are colored green. They'll kind of change as we zoom in more. There's so many layers in here. So the green ones are residential. The tan ones are irrigation customers throughout this area. So we have 3,381 residential meters and 35 irrigation meters throughout this zone. And same thing down here is you can go look at your highest user, and which looks like I think that's the country club over here, the irrigation for the country club. Yeah, you can see right there the country club. So that would be the highest user in that community. And you can scroll through, use this information as well, find out how much water they're using in a 30-day period. Remember, the GIS side only calculates for 30 days. The dashboard, we can pick any time frame we want, all the way down to, it's probably as short as a week, up to the infancy of the program. So that's one of our larger communities, Canyon Lake. Again, looking at this overall dashboard, 92% still is not bad, but when you look at the total dollar loss in that community, that's almost $18,000 a month we're losing in revenue. Ryan, anything else I should add to that one?
No, I think the next slide will cover a little bit of that one.
Next one I want to talk about is Cottonwood. This is another one of our DMAs. I'm going to go back to January 1st on this one. So here, this is another one of those zones. This is about 3,200 homes, and we'll look at that in a second. But here we're 98.4% accurate. Again, above 95, we think that's an A+, but you're still losing $3,400 a month. I mean, I don't want to tell my family I'm losing $3,400 a month. I'm sure, we don't want to tell customers we're losing $3,400 a month in the zone, but it really is accurate. It's 98.4%. But here, our meters are a lot newer. It's a lot newer communities. We do suspect there is a small amount of theft in this area because of construction, and there's water trucks that go through there. But at 98.4%, this zone looks really good. We're very happy with this one. And if you look here, there's that known losses. So here we have that one of those hydrant meters that is not AMI compatible yet, but it's a very large meter and very expensive to replace. So we just input the amount of water that hydrant meter uses during that time frame. And let's see if I can drill through. And you can see when on 9/1 it was inputted how much water that meter read used, and there it is inputted by Ryan Johnson. So it keeps track of that information. So we'll go back over here to the general dashboard and look at Cottonwood Hills. Again, this is a very large community. You can see how big this one is, all highlighted in yellow. And as you zoom in, the properties will turn yellow again. So we got 3,600, so it's 3,663 residential communities and 15 irrigation areas there. Again, this is all fed from one pump station. So this pump station down here has I think a 12-inch mag meter that feeds up to all these different reservoirs in this zone. And it's real important in the beginning that we went through and had to identify that every one of these parcels, when you zoom all the way down, every one of these parcels had the right audit zone. And we found that during implementation, when customer service would input some of this information, they would get the audit zones incorrect. So we would find, audit zones kind of scattered all over. So our DMA consultant kind of spent the first year of his job here going through and making sure all the background data was correct in order to make sure we're getting all the right data for the right zones. All right, we're going to move over to Sky Meadows, one of my favorite ones. Sorry, let me move this out of the way here.
Hey, Tim.
Yes.
Real quick, we have about 15 minutes left, and we do have about 7 or so questions. So just
Okay,
want
let me
to keep that
finish
in mind.
this. Okay, why don't we go ahead and let me look at Sky Meadows just real quick, and then I'll move it quickly. So, Sky Meadows is a very small community up in the hills of the Ortega Mountains. It's about 120 residential properties here. Now, the blank ones are basically unbuilt properties that don't have a meter, but you can see how far away it is from the rest of the community. But what I want to show on this one is real quick, since we are running out of time. So this is the Horsesea, sorry, let me click on the right one. I apologize. I got this big finger here so everybody can see it, but it doesn't point very well. So Sky Meadows from January to October 1st is 90.1% efficient. Well, that's well below our 95. It's maybe a B minus in our book, but because it's such a small zone, it's only losing $736 a month. Again, is that worth sending a crew up the mountain? It's about an hour drive each way to go do lift and shift correlators or hydrant correlators. We also suspect that there could be some potential theft in this community. It's very rural. There are large horse properties. Some people have private ponds. Some people have private fire hoses. So some of the loss in that area could be due to theft, but for $736 a month, it's probably not worth sending staff up the community. And the last slide I want to show as far as the DMA, this is one of my favorites. This is our scattergram that shows all the different DMAs and how they fluctuate up and down each month. And we'll go to Sky Meadows real quick on here. That was a community we just looked at, a very small community. And when we first started, we were 96 and then 92 and 88. And we did some research, started looking at our meters, and we found a 2-inch meter in this community. It was 38 years old. It was still registering, but it wasn't dead. So we brought it down, threw it on our test bench, and found out it was, probably 80% off. It was picking up zero flow on the low end. And as soon as we put a brand new meter in, we found out the customer had a leak, at least for the first 3 or 4 weeks that we monitored that meter until the customer could get that leak fixed. And then you can see we went up 93 and then back down through some of the winter months. Starting here, we looked at, okay, why were we seeing such a decline, and started looking at the age of the rest of the meters. And most of the meters in that community, 50% of those meters were over 20 years old. And within a month or so, we replaced about 70 meters in that community. And you can see we went 90, 91, 93, 90, 97, really high, back up in the 90s over each month. And again, going from 90 to 97 to 93, to me, kind of indicates we have a little bit of theft in that area. So we're monitoring that. So I will end the DMA part of it. We have a couple more slides left so we can get to questions. Let me get out of this here. All right, Ryan.
If it was kind of quick, but some of our unexpected issues were data errors in GIS, the data errors in our CIS customer service database. So that was those DMA what do you call them? Water audit zone labeling. So when you label something wrong in customer service database, GIS draws from that. So GIS had parcels outside of the DMA. So once we got that all cleaned up, we got the right parcels in the right zones, it smoothed itself out. So we're making sure we're capturing all the right information. We had unknown zone separations or normally closed valves. So we had PRVs feeding in from one going to the other. We did have normally closed valves that were partially open due to operational issues. And we also have some that are zones do switch from time to time, depending on operational, how they want to operate the system. So that has to be tracked as well. We have to know when to change those boundaries and add those or delete those accounts out of a zone. The zone input meters. So they were either non-existing, they weren't installed to manufacturer's recommendations, they weren't AMI capable. We did have some interference from chemical injection that was upstream of the meter, and also the mineral interference. So that was that La Laguna causing that 102%. So in the very beginning, we were getting like the 110, 113. We was getting up there in percentage, and we couldn't figure out. We were calibrating our DMA, so to speak. We were making sure all the information was correct. The zone boundaries were, it was a discrete zone. All the valves were closed. So we went to the meter head and we realized there was a cutoff set point that doesn't show flow underneath a certain amount of gallons per minute. So that meter was phantomly running at 98 gallons a minute in the background. So that pump had to overcome 98 gallons, or that meter had to overcome 98 gallons while it was pumping, and then back to zero. And so it threw the whole thing off. It was an oddball thing. So that meter has to be pulled roughly every year or so and cleaned. The sensors, it gets some manganese that comes out of solution from the compressed magnetic current in the water. So it does stick to the meter. So that is an issue. And the cost of the meters. So they weren't budgeted originally. So we did get some grant funding. Thank you, Haley. So that's a way to pay for it, but initially they were not budgeted for. All right, next slide.
All right, and some of the things you have to be successful. And again, we needed the buy-in from our executive management board of directors. We kind of slowly introduced this to the executive team and our board of directors, and we seemed to get really good positive feedback on that. So we were able to move forward. And I think I've mentioned numerous times, you cannot do this without a strong and willing IT department. Our IT department just blows our mind every time we come up with a new idea for this. And really those dashboards and that background data came from IT. They really did a great job of working with operations to come up with these dashboards and make them visually appealing and make the information really obtainable to our DMA coordinator. You also got to have a strong meter changeout program. We're about 50% on our changeout program. We're hoping to grow that. We need to do about 3,500 meters a year to stay within our accuracy zone. And Ryan will talk about that real quickly in the next slide, and then we'll probably start answering questions. You got to have a strong meter testing program. The board of directors was gracious enough to buy us a new test bench back in 2000, which was, 2020, I apologize. Right when COVID hit, and luckily that worked out good because we had boxes and boxes of meters that had been pulled out of the ground that hadn't had a chance to be tested. So we were able to find time during the beginning of COVID to test several hundreds, if not 1,000 meters to get some good background information. I really think you need a dedicated analyst. We have a retired employee that came back to help us kick this off, and he's doing a fantastic job of looking at the data and kind of helping us steer the IT and information that we want to see. And finally, you got to have an engineering department that's willing to add the AMI to new construction, which we do. We work really close with our AMI or with our engineering department to make sure all new communities are now AMI compatible. And then I think this is our last slide, Ryan. I'll run through this really quick.
All right, so this ties back into, you got to kind of know what your meters are doing. So this is about 3,000 meters over 2 years testing. So you can see the years, 1985 was or 86 was the first 3/4 inch meter. You can see as the meters get newer, we get close to that 98.5 to 101.5% accuracy. So that's a big part of it. You need to know your meter accuracy. And then also the flow range of the meter greatly affects the percentages of the DMA. So if all the customers are on drip irrigation and hardly using any water through all their conservation efforts, then you're going to have, that meter percentage is on the low end is usually a lower percentage. So you got to kind of know that, hey, my DMA may not ever get close to 100% because we're only using low flow on all these homes. And that's about it for that one.
The one thing I wanted to bring up is really, the kind of our methodology here is to make sure all of our data is correct before we send a crew out looking for a leak. We've been able to look at some of these zones that see the different percentages, and like the one we showed you with Canyon Lake, where it was almost $18,000 a month loss. Well, we know 50% of those meters are over this 20-year age life. So to send a crew out there right now to go looking for a mysterious leak might not be our best use of our dollar. Better use would be getting those meters changed out and make sure that data is correct. Now, don't get me wrong, we have a very aggressive leak repair program here. Generally, most leaks do not go more than 24 hours at this district. So if we see water surfacing, staff is out there, making those repairs ASAP. So we don't have a lot of time where leaks are running for a long period of time. Does that mean we don't have any unknown leaks? No, but we want to make sure our data is correct first. So we think most of our loss is through aging meters, not so much leaking into the ground. So with that, well, I'd like to thank, these are all basically everybody here at the district, including our board of directors and our executive team that's allowed us to do this. It does take a really good dedicated team to come up with these DMAs, and we couldn't do it without anybody on this page. And with that, I will turn it back over to Kim.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And it really does take a whole team to pull something like this together. So great job for bringing down silos and, using your data to really help each of your team members focus on what's really important to get the job done. So you've answered a lot of the questions already just in your brief summarization. So I'll focus on a couple. This one is, do you have your distribution system divided into sections? And does the AMI capture water loss on a real-time basis?
So we do have, yeah, the system's divided in, like I said, approximately 20 DMAs is where we think we'll end up. And the AMI will send out alerts. So granted, we get hundreds, if not thousand alerts every day from the AMI system. So we look at the top, 1%, and then it basically, it was at the same percentage as yesterday and the day before. And we'll reach out to customers, that show high usage on their private leaks. It does not pinpoint any leaks in the system prior to meters. But if we see a DMA that went from 97, 98, 99, all of a sudden down to 70, 75, 78, we're going to go out and look for a leak or look for, an issue, or is it a data issue? But there's so much knowledge or so much data that comes in on a daily basis. It's almost hard to look at it. Well, it is hard to look at it all.
Absolutely. Next question. Are you using the census communication protocol?
I'll give that one to Ryan.
Some of the meters, so Neptune has their own. Like we use Micrometer and Badger for our pump stations and a lot of our wells and stuff. They use the census protocol. So we just use that wiring scheme for those.
Awesome.
Hope that helped.
Yeah. Another question. How are you dealing with metering instrumentation accuracy? Are you totalizing at the PLC?
We don't run them through the PLCs. We get it directly from our radio. So we test our meters once a year, our larger meters. So they're on a yearly program to be tested. Some of our retail meters are 1.5 years. So that we confirm them on that day. Unfortunately, we can't do them every 6 months like it would be nice to do. But they are tested every year by a third party.
And one thing also, the manufacturer for the mag meters say, they're accurate plus or minus 0.5%. So those are pretty tight as far as the input meters into each of those zones.
Next question. Do you need a daily tank level difference, or can you use the start and end date levels?
So it's done daily by the background, but it's only looking at the day for when I was showing you different date ranges. So when you pick January 1st and then October 1st, it looks at what the difference is on January 1st versus October 1st. Everything in between is just noise, and the program does a calculation automatically. So again, the math problem is out of my range, but our IT people have tested this and confirmed that the information is accurate, and that read comes from the SCADA system every day. Basically every night at midnight, we get a download from the SCADA system and the AMI system.
Awesome. I don't see any other questions coming in that you haven't already answered. So I want to thank you so much. This has been really helpful information. I know our community is really going to get a lot out of it. We will be posting this recording, and I just have a few final announcements. We have our CalWEP webinar tomorrow. So CADC and CalWEP jointly work together to create a guidebook to help urban water suppliers who need to comply with the new conservation regs. Specifically, this was a guidebook around how to find, identify, and measure commercial, industrial, institutional dedicated irrigation meters to meet that compliance. So we're going to talk about what the guidebook entails and how to get more information about that. If you're a member of CADC, we have our second discussion on pipelines, automation and warehousing on November 5th. If you haven't gotten your invite, reach out to me. Also just wanted to remind everybody that all of this information, all of our webinars, we have a whole library of free resources available on our online community. You can access that from our website at www.thecadc.org. And Wavelet, that's our newest software deployment. We have a free version thanks to a very generous USBR grant. So this helps water suppliers access or really be able to look at their water demand data from their customers and look at trends across different types of criteria like demographics, weather, things like that. There's also a module in the premium version for members that's solely dedicated to meet these new water regulation requirements. So if you want to learn more about the CADC, feel free to reach out to me. We're so thankful that you were able to join us. And with that, we'll end our presentation today. Thanks, Ryan. Thanks, Tim. Haley, really appreciate it.
Thank you, Kim. We appreciate the opportunity.
Yep. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.